But China's released how they're going to save the real estate industry there.
Ooh.
And I think we should touch on it. I know
You
it's
have
going to be
my
a bit
interest.
longer episode here today, guys. But I have to touch on this because as crazy as things are there and how like they like to use their communist abilities to quickly slap things in.
Yep.
In times like this, sometimes it's actually really valuable and can make decisions making decisions quickly.
Totally.
That can save their economy. And so China outlined a 16-point plan to rescue its real estate sector. And so I'm just going to read you these points. I got it from Bloomberg.com. They are pumping a ton of money into it. So let me read them to you. Number 1, property development loans for developers. They are, the government is helping with more governance, but also issuance of loans. So they're backing them with like insurance policies similar to CMHC here. So they're incentivizing banks to loan back into the development sector. Already, $370 billion has been pumped back into the development sector.
Okay.
Home buying requirements for individuals being reduced. They're reasonably setting down down payment thresholds and mortgage rate floors in each city, depending on the strength of the city.
It's also worth noting that they've been lowering rates while the rest of the world's been increasing rates.
They're optimizing purchasing rules on first-time homes in new cities.
Okay.
Number 3, aiding construction companies. They're ensuring continuous and stable fundraising by construction companies. So they're continuing to make sure that the money can get to the construction companies so they can keep doing what they need to be doing. 4, extensions on developer borrowing. They are aiding in getting developers' loans re-amortized to give them more time to repay the loans to reduce the foreclosure rate. And so they're saying if something's due in 6 years, we can add another year onto it.
Right.
Number 5, bonds. They're allowing developers to issue bonds again, and they're supporting it and allowing them to do that funding and backing them.
Okay.
Repayment on those bonds can also be extended. So again, giving them basically, it's allowing developers and builders to get money and reduce the timeline that they need to get it back by helping to provide insurance policies or backing it by them funding it themselves. Same thing. Number 6, trust financing. Trust companies are encouraged to provide developers funding support over mergers and acquisitions, rental properties, and retirement homes. So again, same thing. They're pushing on trust companies to also buy into these development companies again, help move the money around, keep things moving.
So what's interesting is it looks like they're kind of... Okay, you finish your thoughts.
Let me finish them.
Yeah.
Number 7, special loans for project completion. China Development Bank is stepping in to offer special loans to make sure these projects get delivered because people aren't just not getting homes that they've put deposits on. That same thing, they're saying number 8, additional support to ensure residential project completion. So they're basically government stepping up to say, if it's a residential project, we're going to make sure this gets across the line. Commercial, they're helping. Residential, they are making sure it's finished.
Yep.
Number 9, property project acquisition. They're helping banks and asset managers to acquire projects that are completed and or investment properties, again, to keep the money turning over, keep the movement for developers. Number 10, market-based approaches, including bankruptcy and restructuring. So their asset management companies are working with predominantly residential projects. Everything is a focus on residential projects, but they're working with developers to acquire bankrupt projects, find a new way to reestablish them and get them back underway. Number 11, home buyers' mortgages. They're encouraging banks to renegotiate with home buyers to extend their mortgage repayments, to potentially give them pauses, to avoid them canceling. Also working heavily with people who are COVID unemployed. 12, mortgage repayment.
Oh my God, how many of these are there?
There's 16.
Jesus.
13, easing a major restriction on banks for property
Should we take
lending.
a break here? Should we take
A restriction on bank lending to developers can be temporarily eased. So they're removing restrictions again for developers, removing restrictions for homeowners. 14, fundraising for acquisitions. Financing rules related to property acquisitions and fundraising for that are being reduced. 15, lending on rental properties. They're pushing financial institutions to ramp up support for companies that own rental business and actively accommodate their long-term funding. Number 16, the final one, so you guys can actually listen to our thoughts, diversify fundraising for rental properties. Banks are also now allowed to issue bonds dedicated to rental properties, and they're trying to work on REIT programs to help establish more REITs and work with them.
Okay. So that's a lot.
It's a ton of stuff, but
yeah.
the main concept...
That's an example of like when
help
fiscal and
developers
monetary
and
policy
home buyers
is
get in.
trying to really aggressively spur growth. And we are literally in the polar opposite position right now where we're trying to
absolutely nuke the
contract
shit out of everybody.
our economy and doing it kind of through well, the housing market directly and indirectly, and generally consumer confidence, because a lot of those things are also meant, like you say those things in part for the actual practical application of them, but also for just the increased consumer confidence in the market, and that's something that's at an all-time low here right now. It's funny because I feel like in a lot of ways, China has been going through this process more quickly and at about a 6 to 12 months ahead of the rest of the world.
Yep.
And they do have the advantage of kind of not caring about their people, like, or just like having, a communist dictatorship, whatever you want to call it, where they can make these pivots
Decision of a few
unilaterally, like very, very, very quickly. And I mean both from like the outbreak standpoint, like they were 6 months ahead of the world. Their clampdown reaction was quicker. The extreme with which they did it, and then their collapse was very, very fast. And now they're trying to ramp up just as fast. So in a weird way, it's curious to look at them and say, well, are they just where we're going to be 1 year from now? Because we are entering the worst of it, and they've been through the worst of it. If you watch this episode for even the last few months, we've been talking about the collapse in China and blah, blah. And now what happens is once you hit rock bottom, then you get all of this easing and then all of this, these catalysts that they try to put back into the marketplace to ramp this growth back up. And we've been talking about how that's often a redistribution and how like some of those things are not going to be able to be taken advantage of as easily by certain people as by others, right? So you do get these redistributions of wealth. But I look at that and that looks like a foreshadowing to maybe 12 months from now here in North America, when they start doing things like, gosh, we really need to help these developers build more buildings. We really need to make it more reasonable for people to afford to buy homes again once we kind of bottom out here. And then it takes a lot to get it chugging back up.
Two things I want to say right off the hop. I know you said that it feels like they're trying to put a beat down on the development side of things in Canada or North America with the interest rate hikes. I don't know that was their objective with what they did, but that is the repercussions of what they're doing. The bigger thing that I think is interesting to consider is that China actually has an oversupply and had an oversupply of homes versus we have an undersupply. So like these things would be even more advantageous to us.
Good point, bud.
But yeah, thank you. But they have an oversupply. We have an undersupply. We need what they've done here so aggressively. And that's the part that blows my mind is that we're still not getting there. But we've talked about it before. I think and we think that they're going to bring some programs together that are going to help development take place because we absolutely need it.
Not only just development take place, but debt servicing protections here because, like it's hard to have this double-edged sword of we need to curb spending while also making it way more expensive for, like we need certain things to come down in price while at the same time raising the price of other things to make people poor. Like it's a tricky balance. I'm not saying it's not, but I personally think we're overturning the screws and that. We've done enough interest rate hikes. They do need
development-specific money. They just need development-specific money. That's the only way it's genuinely going to work because they can't have rates super low because then homes become unbearably expensive.
Yeah.